What's up, everybody? You're very welcome along to this first ever live Anfield Agenda podcast, which is a bit weird because we don't edit it really anyway. But we said this week we do the video live, and then what we do is the last 15 minutes or so, we take some questions, we take some comments from the people who are live. So for the audio listeners, we're just going to do this as about a 30-40 minute pod, and then we'll do the rest for the guys that are live in the chat. As always, I am joined by Mr. Steve Bland and Mr. Jack, forever going to be known as 6-0 Gill. How are we both, gentlemen? I'll come to you first, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, all good, Can't complain. It's amazing what a win does for the mood.
It really, really is. I've been smiling all week since the game. Jack, you happy?
I was until you called me Jack 6-0 Gill. But no, I'm nervous. I'm nervous ahead of tomorrow. But I think it's a massive game, and we'll talk about it more in a minute. But I don't think the size of the game can be downplayed at all. But we were boosted today, I think, by a few pieces of fitness news.
And let's get straight into that then. No better place to start, Steve, than with that bit of fitness news from the gaffer today. Diogo JOTA should be available. Alisson going to be back between the sticks. And then I suppose the big question I want to start with is, where do you want to see Fabinho playing?
Oh, man, I knew you were going to ask me this. Every time I see a poll on Twitter, I answer it differently. It's just, I just don't know. I sort of want two of him. Is it possible to have two of him? Because I want one in midfield and I want one at the back. My gut feeling is I want him back in midfield, given that we've got centre halves that can play there. I just think he's that important, and I think actually the job that he would do in front of the defence would actually protect the defence he's leaving behind. So I think, gun to my head, I think I'd like him back in that defensive midfield place.
I'm the same as you, Steve. I've gone back and forth on this, and I think what I've settled on, and great to hear what Jack has to say as well, but I've settled on lash him at centre back for this one, and we get through this, and then we'll integrate him back into midfield. I'm maybe overly nervous about the game against Chelsea tomorrow, Steve, but for me, I get where you're coming from. I've flip-flopped on this all week as well.
I think they just, I mean, Nat Phillips and Kabak didn't do a bad job the other night, did they? And I know Chelsea's a different prospect altogether, and where Nat Phillips maybe is quite well suited to, McBurney and Ollie Burke and Billy Sharp and strikers like that. He's less suited to Abraham or Werner or Pulisic. These guys buzzing around him. I just maybe edge to getting him back in midfield, because I think that's where he can do a really good job. And I think that's, we're kind of been misfiring going forward, haven't we? But I think him being in there gives us the platform to, build going forwards. And like I said, the guys at the back did okay. So I would stick with the two at the back probably, and then just get him in midfield. Who I'd leave out in the midfield, I'm not really quite sure. So don't ask me that question.
I'm coming back to you for that in a couple of minutes, mate. That's next on the agenda.
Oh dear.
Jack, for you, what do you think of the centre-back pairing? I mean, Steve's made some good points there. You can make an argument for Kabak and Phillips. You can make an argument for Kabak and Fabinho. I think if they start with Giroud, although it's difficult to predict what way Tuchel's going to go, then I'd rather see Phillips. But again, the consistency thing is a fair point as well that we've spoken about before. If we have a chance now to get a settled back fourthly end of the season, we could do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Sheffield United did cause us some problems going forwards, and that Sheffield United, I think if I see that back four against Chelsea, I am slightly worried. I get Steve's point. We all want to see Fabinho and Henderson in the natural position at midfield. But for me, in this Chelsea game, I like to see Fabinho at the back, because I think it'd bring more security into that back four. At the moment, for me, I wince when I see the team sheet, and that's nothing against Kabak and Phillips, but I just think there's a mistake waiting to happen, and once there is,
it's a little bit against Kabak and Phillips, isn't it?
Well, Kabak needs to stop booting the ball into our net for a start. Like he can forget that. We've got a bit lucky with that, gents. Let's be honest.
It is a little bit against them, and I don't think Phillips has put too much out of line in a Liverpool shirt when playing for the first team. But, I think when Ollie Burke came on for Sheffield United at the weekend, it showed what I've been saying for weeks about Phillips, that when he's put against, a bit more of a pacey striker, that's where he'll struggle. And Kabak too, I'm not convinced about him so far. And though I'd love to see Fabinho, like you say, Steve, in front of that back four, and he would provide extra security, I'm more worried about, Chelsea getting in behind Kabak and Phillips, which I think they may be able to do all too easily. So I think, at least just for this Chelsea game, I'd like to see Fabinho at the back, personally.
I think he will play at the back. That's what I think. I can't see. Yeah, I think he will play at the back, but yeah, I see arguments both ways, I guess.
If we look at the midfield situation, so it seems that Thomas Tuchel has preferred a Kovacic and Jorginho kind of double pivot in that centre midfield for them, doing that kind of Hendo-esque role, I suppose, that we've seen from our midfield for a very long time. Keep the ball, move the ball, intercept it. So what I'm wondering ahead of this game is what way Kloppo will set up our midfield. Now, I've always edged Steve towards an attacking midfield. So, I'm drooling at the thoughts of Keita, Thiago and Curtis Jones, but I'm probably a little bit too forward thinking for this game.
I think I would love it if he played Jorginho. I think it would. Yeah, do you remember I remember a few years ago we played United and they played Carrick and Scholes, in midfield, and we're with Jones or with Wijnaldum or with Keita, what we have got is a load of energy and a load of ability to press. And I think I'd be surprised if he played Jorginho, just because I think he's quite easy to get to, and I'd be pretty pleased with that. Actually, I think I'd be more worried if he played Kante. I think Kante's miles better player than Jorginho. But yeah, it is interesting. There's Keita coming back is a really interesting one, because I mean, for all his ups and downs, if you look at the stats of how many games we win when he's in the team, it's really high, isn't it? He's got a 75% win ratio, and that's the best of any of our first team players, I think, or second best. So I think there's something in that, and I think every time he comes back, we've talked about it before, haven't we? Every time he comes back, he sort of looks like he's getting somewhere, looks like he's nailing a place down, then he'll get injured again. So yeah, so I don't know. This is a waffly way to get around to the point that I think he'll just probably play the same midfield again as he played the other night, I think.
Yeah, it is a tough one, Jack. And look, if I had to lose one of the trio that I picked there, so I can't believe I'm about to say this, but if I had to drop one of Thiago, Curtis Jones or Keita, I'm probably pulling out Thiago to put Gini in there because I really love the idea of being able to get on the front foot with Keita and Curtis Jones. I just really love that idea. I love that Naby can break a line. We've seen in the 10 minutes that he came on against Sheffield United and just one move, a drop of the shoulder, a little side foot pivot, and he was away. I just think that could break the line for us. And I think it could be really important for us to win the ball back against this Chelsea team as high up the pitch as possible, because I think there's a mistake in that back four and that goalkeeper.
There is, but you got to remember that they look well drilled in the Thomas Tuchel. They've played 8 games, they haven't lost yet. They've only conceded once, and that was Takumi Minamino who scored that goal, by the way. It's going to be interesting. I think it'll be the same midfield we saw against Sheffield United, with Fabinho put in at the back. Probably Phillips coming out. It would most likely be Fabinho alongside Kabak, in my opinion. But yeah, I'd love to see Naby. We saw him against Chelsea last season. The second time we played Chelsea, I thought he was outstanding. I think he would have a real good effect on this game, but I also think he can make an impact from the bench, and we don't know how ready he is. We know that Liverpool didn't rush him back from injury. We bided our time. We patiently waited for him to be fully fit again, did extra work with him in the gym and stuff to try and, sniff out injuries. And I think Klopp will slowly play him back into starting games. And I think we'll see the same midfield 3 starting against Chelsea that we saw against Sheffield United. And one thing I want to chat to you about, lads, is whether you think we'll play in the same system that we saw against Sheffield United, and whether that was just Klopp's way of beating Sheffield United, or whether you think that's a new thing that Klopp's going to take from here on in forwards.
I noticed that actually in the first in the first when they in the sort of moments after they kicked off, really Mane tucked right in, and I wondered if there was something afoot there. It is interesting. I mean, I don't think it was the massive adjustment that some people were writing about. It didn't feel to me like massively different. It just there were times last year where one of the forwards tucked in quite a lot, and they have a nice kind of system where among like the three midfielders, two of them will tuck in and one pushes wide, and then when the ball's over the other side, the other two tuck in, the other one pushes wide, and it's always been quite a flexible system, hasn't it? So I don't think it was that much different. There was, we've got to take Sheffield United with, the big caveat of the fact that it was Sheffield United and they're a really poor team for all their endeavour and their effort. They're a really poor team. So, I don't know. I think a similar midfield. Fabinho probably will come in for Phillips. I don't see Jota starting. I don't think he'll be anywhere near that. If he gets 20 minutes, I imagine that'll be a result. But yeah, just a similar performance, because they were, the opposition wasn't great, but they were better, weren't they? They were better all over the field.
Yeah, it is difficult. I'm not going to lie, gents. I'm extremely nervous about this game tomorrow. In fact, I'd go as far as to say, if you offered me a point now, I'd probably take it with where we are. And I just think we're going into this one, and I don't think it's a must-win game, but I definitely would say it's a must-not-lose game.
Yeah, definitely.
Both sides, if we could... Sorry, go ahead, Jack, go ahead.
I think 3 points are more important for us than Chelsea. I honestly do. Because I think, with everything that's happened recently with Liverpool, it would be huge for us to turn around what's going on recently. And with the win against Leipzig in the Champions League, where I thought that would be a turnaround, and then we went to Everton and produced another lackluster and poor performance and lost the first derby in 22 years, and then we bounced back from that, beating Sheffield United at the weekend. But like Steve says, they're not exactly a great side.
They're beating Villa tonight, though. Somebody's just pointed out they're 1-up against Villa, which is
1-1 in the Leicester game as well, as things stand at half time.
But it's obviously it's a Villa side who have made a lot of changes, or without Grealish, and a very hit and miss Sheffield United. But what I want to see is us take that energy and everything from the win into the Chelsea game and produce a fantastic performance against them, 3 points, and really turn around what's been going on recently, and go into that Fulham game on a high. And I do think that 3 points for us tomorrow are more important, because if you look at Chelsea's run at the minute, they've still got the new manager bounce. They're still very much on a high. As I say, 8 games, no defeats for Thomas Tuchel, and it would be nice to go to a Chelsea side who we have history with and knock them off their perch a bit.
They don't have a great record, do they, against the big six or the top four, whatever way you want to phrase it. I was looking through their record of games, and there's not many wins in there. A lot of draws and losses, to be fair. So I don't know. Maybe I'm overly nervous. I mean, I did a show with Craig28, who's a Chelsea channel, and he was very nervous, Steve, from their side going into this game. And as Jack pointed out, they've still got that new manager bounce.
It's a big game, isn't it? I mean, it's a big game for them both. I think, a lot of Chelsea fans, probably if you asked them honestly, a month or two ago, they might have written off top four this year. They weren't. I wouldn't think they were really thinking about it when they were down in 9th or 10th. But, what we were saying on the pod a few weeks back, that this league is so tight and everybody's losing and everyone's, inconsistent, that actually all it takes is, like it shows, 7 or 8 game unbeaten run, 3 or 4 wins, and you're right up there. And the same thing applies to Liverpool, doesn't it? 3 wins on the bounce. It could be Sheffield United. You get through Chelsea, and then you've got Fulham at home as well. All of a sudden, the whole picture would look differently. Leicester are obviously drawing at the moment. It's Burnley. They're dropping points. Harvey Barnes has got injured, and it's really tight. And all it takes, like I said, is just 3 or 4 wins. A couple of good performances, one going off Firmino's backside to win a late scrappy 1-0, the sort of games that we won a lot a lot of last year. Yeah, that's all it takes, and it's not beyond this team to go on a 10 game run, is it? We've seen it before. So having said all that, it is a massive game that does make me very nervous because it's the kind of proper 6-pointer, isn't it? At that end of the table.
Before we push on and look at other stuff, I just want to take a second to just address obviously the sad passing of Ian St. John. The word legend, Jack, is thrown around at times, often far too easily, but it is fair to say under Shankly, he was a massive part of establishing Liverpool as the big club that we are today.
Yeah, a proper Liverpool legend. I think I tweeted that yesterday off both my account and the Anfield Agenda account, and it's so sad to see his passing, and it feels like far too many of these in the last 12 months or so with COVID and stuff like that. But yeah, a real Liverpool legend before my era, but nonetheless, you grow up hearing stories about that great period of Shankly and Paisley and that great squad and a great club that we still are because of what Shanks did. And Ian St. John was obviously a huge part of that. So yeah, all our respect goes to the family, of course, and he's a legend we'll never forget.
Steve, for me and you, mate, we're probably of a similar age, so you probably remember St. Greavesy growing up, the show on ITV. That was part of my football and education.
It was just the best, wasn't it? I mean, everybody, people now think of Football Focus, they think of Soccer AM maybe, but that was the original one, wasn't it? That was the one that on a Saturday, it was about lunchtime, wasn't it? It was just like you had to watch it. It was incredible. I loved it. It was the best show. And then I used to work at the BBC, and he was someone that I'd call up from time to time and get him on 5 Live to talk about a Liverpool related story, and not all of the Liverpool legends are easy to talk to, I should say, but he was just the nicest man, and a lot of friends of mine work for Radio Merseyside and that kind of thing, and we've all been tweeting and all been sharing messages and stories and photographs and just what a lovely man and what a massive loss for the club it is, because he was, as Jack said and as you said, he was a massive part of the story, and the club tweeted a lovely video, didn't they, of the kind of the story of Ian St. John when he joined from Motherwell and the kind of transformation that happened, immediately afterwards. And Shankly would say, wouldn't he, Ron Yates at the back and Ian St. John up front, and we're all right. And so he was, it's not overplaying it to say that people like him and him in particular, are massive reasons why the club is where it is and what it is now.
Absolutely agree, and very well said from both. And of course, we lost Glenn Roeder this week, and we passed on our condolences to Glenn Roeder's family as well. Another proper footballing man. Gents, look, before we finish up on the Chelsea game, just want to look at the front three. I can't see any change, as Steve alluded to earlier on. Diogo Jota is coming back from a long time out and an illness now, obviously. So if he is in the squad for the game, Jack, I think he's going to start on the bench, mate, and maybe come on for the last 20 if needed.
Yeah, and we've seen, he can make it an impact from the bench too. I remember earlier in the season, the game against West Ham where he came on off the bench, him and Shaqiri completely changed the game. So we know what Jota can bring us, but he can be equally as impactful on the game when he starts and when he's brought on. So, it wouldn't surprise me the way Chelsea's been playing recently if they try and keep the ball there. They're hard to break down for the opening hour or so. Klopp looks to the bench nice and early, brings on Naby and Diogo, and we see a full attacking Liverpool side looking to break down Chelsea. And I do think, as I said before, I think Chelsea of the two sides will be happier with a point. Obviously, we've lost 4 on the bounce now at Anfield. We'll be wanting to change that. You need to make Anfield a fortress again. We won't want sides to come to Anfield and think they can get a sniff at anything. So, for me, 3 points, not only for the top 4 race, but for pride and for Liverpool back. 3 points tomorrow is so important for me. And like Steve said, it's a proper 6-pointer.
Yeah, for you, Mr. Bland, do you think agree? Jota off the bench. I mean, I looked at the bench against Sheffield United, mate, and let's be honest, it wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, he changes everything, doesn't he? Really, without him, there isn't really an option off the bench. We've talked about Origi before, haven't we? As not being a actual, proper viable option. He's someone you chuck on with 5 minutes to go if you need to pump some balls into the box, and he might get one, but he's not, a genuine alternative to what's up there already. And Jota is, and I think he changes everything. People forget, just how good he was, for those. Seems like no time at all, doesn't it, between him joining and getting injured? But what was it, 10 or 12 games or something? He was phenomenal. I mean, to the point where they were, breaking up, changing the way we played, breaking up the front players and all sorts, weren't they? So, yeah, I think a fit Diogo Jota changes everything. So, yeah, that's a big positive. Fabinho back, a massive positive. Alisson back is a massive positive as well. And Milner, Naby Keita, it starts to look a little bit brighter, doesn't it?
It does. And look, there was some big news this week, gents, that I wanted to get your opinion on. Obviously, we thought at one point that Red Ball acquisition, which was the Jerry Cardinal, Billy Bean consortium, was going to be looking to buy a stake in FSG. That didn't quite work out. But what we have had now is Red Bird, who is just Jerry Cardinal himself. And, from my understanding of this, he's going to be buying a 10% stake in FSG's all-around holdings. It'll be a private investment, so it won't see FSG floated on the stock exchange. It will free up $750 million or around £540 million in capital for FSG to, let's be honest, do it as they please. But it will also form a strategic partnership, which is something that the owners have spoken about for a long time. From my understanding of what Jerry Cardinal does, he's owns a lot of image rights and or players that looks after their image rights and is very good at the digital side of things with bringing in revenue streams, and of course owns a massive stake in Toulouse in French second division team as well. So we could get to a point, Steve, where we see this kind of feeder club scenario where, I don't want to say get around the rules, but with UK's rules now changing since they've left the EU, this could give us an option to maybe bring in the likes of a few South American players or players like that could go to France or go elsewhere, gain some minutes, and then get their entry into the UK.
I mean, it's sort of just part of the, FSG becoming, richer, more wealthy. You hope some of it filters down. But yeah, I mean, getting around the rules and all that kind of thing with feeder clubs, it's, other clubs do it, so why not? City own half of Europe, don't they? So, Chelsea have got a few as well, haven't they? So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm a big FSG supporter, so I'm kind of on board with whatever they, I think they've got the best interest of the club at heart. So I'm pretty much on board with whatever they go with. It's it can't really be a bad thing, I wouldn't think. A bit more money coming into the guys that own the club.
It has led to a lot of talk, Jack, about hashtag Mbappe 2021. Now, I want to make very clear that this is equity that they freed up, and FSG can buy themselves yachts. They can invest in the Red Sox. They can invest in Liverpool. They can do whatever they want with, because as they've sold off a strategic partnership. So none of us know what way that money will be used, and it is FSG to do with as they please. But it has got a lot of us thinking, mate, hasn't it? Let's be honest.
I was just about to say, I enjoyed the coincidental timing of everything this week, where this comes out and then all of a sudden it's followed firstly by Varane rumours, and then Haaland, and then it was Mbappe again, and back to Haaland, and it is very coincidental with the timing of everything. But yeah, like you say, Craig, it has freed up money. I think everyone's hoping for a big summer from a Liverpool perspective, and every stream I do for both Anfield Agenda and Mundo Sporto, I seem to be asked the same question. Everyone wants a big transfer for this summer, but right now I think it's ludicrous to look ahead to the summer, because we've still got so much to do this season. Our position in the league still isn't confirmed. We're still currently in the Champions League, and if we don't confirm top four, I would like to see us go all out in that. And I think it's stupid of us to look ahead and think of bringing in the likes of Mbappe, the likes of Haaland, and Varane, when we've not even guaranteed top four football yet. So, Firstly, though I'm dreaming of the summer ahead and the players that we might see holding a Liverpool shirt up with a name on the back, and the players that we can attract with the status of the club and the night football links, and now obviously the news from earlier in the week. I just want to focus on the here and now, starting tomorrow with Chelsea and getting 3 points and looking forward and guaranteeing top four, pushing for the Champions League and seeing how strongly we can finish this season.
I don't know, lads. I'm fully on board this hype train. I got to say, I want to dream. I want to believe. And one thing, I read something really interesting last week, actually, that I didn't know this until last week, but apparently when he was making that move from Monaco to Paris Saint-Germain, John W. Henry flew him and his family around, I think, the Bay of Nice or something for an hour and a half, 2 hours on his private jet to try and convince Mbappe that a move to Liverpool will be more beneficial to him than a move to Paris Saint-Germain, Steve. So, there has been a long-held interest.
Well, I mean, look, I've got a long-held interest in having a Ferrari, but it doesn't mean I'm going to get one.
The second one,
the second one. I just, I laugh when people, journalists and newspapers write about, so Liverpool are interested in so and so, United are interested. Of course they are. If Mbappe said he was leaving tomorrow, everybody would be after him. Everybody with the financial means would be after him. Would be ringing him up, doing everything they could to persuade him. Same with Haaland. Same with Varane. Same with a handful of players. The interesting thing with Haaland and Mbappe is that both the links seem to be related to Klopp, don't they? Haaland. The sort of Dortmund, the esteem that Klopp has held in Dortmund. I think one of the guys on Sky Sports was talking about this earlier, and he said, you don't underestimate the esteem that Jurgen Klopp has still held in Germany and in Dortmund. And I think the same, everything you read about Mbappe, it's because he'd love to go and play for Jurgen Klopp. I mean, all of this is immaterial if we don't make top four, isn't it? It's pie in the sky. It's ambitious anyway, but it's pie in the sky if we're not in the top four. So, like Jack says, get there. But I think, say we got to a point where we had qualified for the Champions League next year. The picture was looking a lot better with injuries and so on, and the finance was there. There's no doubt we're an attractive proposition. Far more so than going back 10 years.
It's keeping up with City as well, isn't it? We know they're likely to sign a striker this summer, and with how good they've been this season, they've got it looks like they're going to get the third title in four seasons, and for me now it's a matter of when rather than if for City's title to be confirmed this season, and it's making sure that we get back on their heels again, because this season hasn't been good enough from a Liverpool perspective. We fell off, in the new year, and it's making sure that we bring in some players in order for us to compete again. They're the greatest young talents in world football right now, Mbappe and Haaland, and of course being linked to them is going to be a great thing, but getting them to join Liverpool is also going to be incredibly difficult. And the first step in doing that is making sure that we have European football and Champions League football for next season. And for me, that's why I don't want to get my hopes up, because we lose tomorrow against Chelsea and things look incredibly negative in terms of going forwards and what happens then and where we finish in the league this season. So yeah, I think before we look to who we're going to bring in the summer, we need to ensure that we're playing Champions League football this time next year.
Just to get back to Mbappe, though, because I'm not letting this go. If you are going to sign Kylian Mbappe, no matter who you are, whether you be Real Madrid, City, United, whoever, this is the summer to get that deal done, because you're going to get him at, yes, you're still going to pay an extremely high price, but you're going to get him at below his real market value, and you still have that FSG positive spin of being able to keep him for 5 years, Steve, and then probably move him on for a lot more than you bought him for.
And that's a really good point, actually, also in relation to the Barcelona and Madrid, isn't it? Because they got no money. They're skint, particularly Barcelona. They're absolutely broke. So, if he decided he wanted to leave Paris Saint-Germain this summer and he said to them, right, I'm leaving, I don't want to stay, then you look at who realistically could afford him. And there aren't actually that many clubs, are there, who would be able to pay the money to get him out of Paris. So, probably, City, Liverpool, Juventus, maybe a Madrid and Barca, if they cobbled all their piggy banks together, might be able to do something. Get the King of Spain to loan them, loan Madrid a bit of money. But there aren't actually that many clubs. So you look at it from that way, and you'd have to say that if we were in the top four, we've got as good a shout as anybody, given the things that are obviously attractive to him.
There you go. I knew I'd get you around eventually.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would absolutely love it, because I just think he is the most electrifying footballer that I've seen in a long time. Like he is unbelievable to watch, and I think he would absolutely tear the Premier League to pieces. But I struggle to see it, to be honest. But I would love it if it happened.
I can't wait for the summer though, when somebody sees Mbappe getting bevied in the Arkles.
Yeah,
definitely. There's always you'll be tracking Mercedes vetoes all summer, all over the place. Every airport, every flight that comes anywhere near that part of France will be coming in. I do love that though. I have to say, it's one of my favourite parts of the transfer window. I want to kind of stick on transfers though for a few minutes, because there's been a few more names thrown around this week, and two in particular that I wanted to get your opinion on, Steve. Firstly, Rafinha or Neto? If I was to offer you either one, mate, or would you pass?
I really like them both, actually. They're completely different players, I think. Neto is a lot, cleverer. He works in little tight spaces. Seems to be almost a number 10 rather than a wide player to me. Whereas Rafinha is almost a good old fashioned winger, isn't he? He's got bags of pace, got a trick, good delivery from out wide. Really good left foot. I really like them both. I'd probably I said Neto a few weeks back when somebody asked me this, but I think I'd probably go with Rafinha now. I think he's a really good looking player. I think he would fit in well. He's a good age, but having said that, both of them are, and Leeds particularly, well, actually, and Wolves as well. They're not in any. I mean, Wolves have been stung on Jota, haven't they? They're not going to give us another bargain, are they? So and Leeds are. I wouldn't imagine they'd be too keen on letting them go after one season either. So either of them are going to cost upwards of probably £50 million, aren't they? So, but yeah, I mean, either of them would be really good signings, I reckon.
There's something about Neto that there's a bit of snidiness about him that I like. There's just that bit of grit or something there that I was the opposite. I was different to Steve. I would have said Rafinha, and then in the last couple of weeks, I've kind of changed my mind over to the idea of Neto. Now, look, we all want the Mbappe type signing, but I can't see Haaland ever coming, because one, Briola, I can't see that one getting a deal across the line. And again, as I've always said, if I'm representing Haaland, I'm telling him stay put till next summer. You're at a good club. You're still very young. You're going to be playing European football. You'll probably get a better financial package for yourself, because we know what the buyout clause would be there next summer for him. Have you any indication?
That's why Dortmund might want to let him go this summer, isn't it? Because of the buyout clause next summer.
Yeah, and again, like Jack, I think I've seen somewhere that he'd ask for a package of about 76 million for himself for 5 years if he was to go this summer.
Yeah,
now by that I mean obviously his wages and stuff.
I think as well his release clause is brought forwards a year if Dortmund don't qualify for the Champions League, which I think is another issue for Dortmund. But yeah, there is no doubt Dortmund will try and keep hold of Haaland and try and change his contract, because, as I said, he's up there with Mbappe as the best young talents in world football at the moment. There is going to be every top club in Europe sniffing around him. We saw Solskjaer talking about him in a press conference the other week, and I'm sure many, many more top European clubs will be asked about Haaland and whether they're looking to bring him in the summer over the next few weeks and months. But yeah, Rafinha and Neto aren't bad backup options. They're Premier League players themselves. They've been playing in the Premier League now this season. They both look like incredibly good young talents, and why not want them both? Because they're both good in their own unique ways. I think Steve said Neto is good as sort of inside forwards, and Rafinha is an incredibly tricky winger who we've seen has bags of pace and bags of talent. But we have to remember both Wolves and Leeds are going to be tough nuts to crack, and it's going to be hard to negotiate fees for both of them. So this summer is a really interesting one for me, and it's a big summer for Liverpool, in my opinion, transfers and getting transfers right, which FSG have done on many occasions, is pivotal. And I have no doubt that both Pedro Neto and Rafinha will be players that have caught the eye of our transfer committee.
Ladies and gents, this is where we're going to bring the audio version of the podcast to an end. So if you're listening to this on iTunes or Acast or Spotify, this is where we say goodbye to you guys and thank you to Steve and Jack. But for you guys that are tuned in live now, as promised, we're going to go and take a few questions. So we seen one here a few seconds ago, gents, that, where is he gone? This one intimated about Rodrigo de Paul. I'll try and pull the comment up when I find it, but I want to get your thoughts on that link, Steve. Rodrigo de Paul from Udinese, obviously.
I'll be honest, he's a player that I only really know much about from computer games. I mean, there's a big thing, isn't there, that we all become experts on players, don't we, as soon as we hear them linked to Liverpool. He isn't someone that I know an enormous amount. I know Leeds were quite interested last summer, weren't they? And he's obviously a good player. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with Jack. I kind of, I trust the opinion of the transfer committee. They haven't got an awful lot wrong over the years, have they? The last 3 or 4 years, particularly. So, if they're thinking that he's a good player, he's a sort of attacking midfielder, isn't he? Like number 8, possibly number 10.
He's really diverse. He can play on either wing. He can play in central midfield. He can play in the 10. He's a diverse player. I think it's an interesting one. He made it clear that he was unhappy that he was denied a move to Leeds last season. But it does seem like the link to Liverpool won't go away, and 26 million isn't a bad shout. Maybe a Genie replacement with a bit more of an attack-minded player who's also diverse, which we know Klopp likes a diverse player. If he can play on both wings, he can play in midfield and in the 10. It's good, but I'm just looking at his stats this season: 5 goals and 3 assists in 23 appearances. Average shots 52, shots on target 9, average passes per game 42, pass completion rate 72.7%. It's an interesting one. 26 years old, of course. I've not seen too much of him, but clearly, as I say, it's something that won't go away. And he seems like a player that we're looking to bring in to replace Wijnaldum, whose departure now looks imminent.
Hey, Jack, my wife has a question here for you. She said, is Jack wearing his hat tonight so the 2 lovely bald gentlemen are not jealous of his amazing hair? I swear she's obsessed with your hair, mate. She doesn't see much hair very often, so she's clearly obsessed with yours.
Jack's actually bald underneath there.
As soon as I came on this tonight, I remembered that I promised on the phone last night, Craig, when I rang you, that I wouldn't be wearing a hat tonight. So I felt incredibly rude for that. But no, I promise I'll let free these luscious locks for next week.
We'll get him down to a Blade Zero, Steve, at some point. We'll talk him into it. Yeah.
I've been there in the summer. I've done that. It's never happening again. I don't think my girlfriend will let me go bald again.
Another couple of midfielders that we've seen linked. And look, there's a talk again, Steve, of a handshake agreement between Gini Wijnaldum and Inter Milan that was doing the rounds yesterday. We were linked to that young kid from Inter Milan, Nicolo Barella. Now, I have to say, mate, that excites me. I mean, I don't know if they'd let him go, but he's a player, yeah.
He looks a really good player, doesn't he? And he's the right age, the right kind of profile. I think he'd be. I'm a little bit hesitant with players coming from Italy. I think the Italian game is so different to ours that it's a real culture shock coming into the Premier League, having played in Serie A. And there aren't. I mean, Salah did it all right, didn't he? But he'd had a spell over here before. But yeah, I mean, he looks a really good one, to be fair. Though he looks like the right age, the right kind of profile, versatile as well, like Jack says about De Paul. I mean, are any of them better than Gini Wijnaldum though?
Well,
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. And I know we talked about this a few weeks back, didn't we? It just frustrates the hell out of me.
It stinks, doesn't it? It stinks to high hell.
We've seen a few bits, a few rumours knocking about that actually maybe he, was open to staying, didn't we, a couple of days ago? But and then now we're seeing, like you said, Inter Milan. Goodness only knows. I mean, if Inter Milan are now being talked about, that tells you that he just wants to go, and it's not the Barca thing. But Yeah, I would still just like him to stay, and then we don't have to bring anybody in that area, because actually there are areas of the team that need more surgery than centre midfield.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I suppose we should have a little chat, gents, about the Fulham game before we finish up, because we won't speak again before that game coming up. And it's fair to say, Jack, Scott Parker has improved that Fulham team a lot, but I just think they just lack the Premier League quality that might cost them in the end this season. But there's no doubt they're playing for the manager.
Yeah, he's built them into a side that are hard to break down and hard to beat. They made a good signing at the end. They brought in Tosin Adebayo, who I think has been good, a good addition for them at the back. And yeah, they've just set up at the minute where they're hard to beat, and they're really pushing to stay up in this latter sort of stage of the season. And it's interesting. It's going to be more difficult than people think. You'll remember the game earlier in the season where we dropped points against them, of course, and Liverpool didn't really show up on the day, but Fulham gave us a decent game and were a tougher task than we thought. So, I'm not too confident going into any game at the minute, especially after what I said before the Everton game.
Oh, Jack,
what was that, Jack?
I preferred
my mind completely, mate. I don't know what that was.
I preferred confident, Jack. I preferred confident,
Rambo
Jack. You let us old folks be the voice of pessimism. We need some optimism from you.
I'd love to be optimistic, and I think that Chelsea game tomorrow is massive, and I'm excited for it. I'm also extremely nervous, but games like the one against Fulham where they'll sit off us and we have to break them down make me incredibly nervous at the moment. And a game another one at Anfield as well, I believe, where our record there recently hasn't been too great. But I hope it's 6 points now from 2 games. You can get that comment off the screen. That
was Connor, believe it or not.
And I think, it'll be. I'm praying for 6 points in these next 2 games, because if we do, I think that will be a huge week. I think this could be a huge week for our race for the top 4 at the end of the season. And then next week we can talk about Mbappe and Haaland.
It's a good point. I mean, it is a really good point, though. It is a massive game, Chelsea, and the Chelsea game really affects the Fulham game, doesn't it? Because if you come off the back of Chelsea and you've got 3 points out of that game, played really well, what a lift that gives you going into a game against a team that you should beat. Whereas if you slip up against Chelsea, all of a sudden you look at the Fulham game and
don't say the phrase slip up on Chelsea, Steve. In the
same no, sorry. Sorry. Oh, sorry. That's that's bad, isn't it? But talking of comments on the thing, though, I think somebody just said I'm a very handsome chap without hair. So not all of the comments.
Shout out to Steve's wife.
Steve, me and Ray can't see that. I think you're imagining it, mate.
It's on Steve's in-house intranet there. That's all he's seeing. It's going to be tough. Every game's tough in the Premier League, and look, we need to start getting our home form right, gents. And we've two games in a row now at home. So if we can get a result against Chelsea tomorrow, I think that will carry in to the game against Fulham on Sunday.
I honestly think if we can beat Chelsea. Shit, why am I going to say this? I hope that we can turn that around and go on a bit of a run, but it's one of them where you can't look forward to anything at the minute, because I thought that, as I say, after the Leipzig game, and then what happened against Everton, and now I'm terrified to say anything optimistic. Otherwise, I feel like the one Magpies will start returning, and I'm fed up. Get me out of lockdown. Get this season done with. Let's get us in the top 4, and fingers crossed. 3 points tomorrow.
We've ruined them, Steve. He's only been on a couple of weeks, and we've ruined him already.
Absolutely destroyed him. We've taken away his youthful optimism, and we've made him one of us, Craig. That's the problem.
One thing I want to talk about as well that does worry me with the form he's in at the minute is it's the Under-21 European Championship starting at the end of this month. Which means we could lose Curtis Jones for at least for a few games.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I mean, you'd think he'd be an absolute shoo-in, wouldn't you? Not just to be part of the squad, but to play every game at the moment. So yeah, it's a good shout. Worrying. I mean, I wonder if there's any. Are the under 21? Are the clubs able to press back against the under 21s?
I
there any kind of?
I don't know if Curtis Jones would want to play in that. Whether he sees that as his best pathway through to getting in the England side, the England squad in the summer. But I can't imagine the club are very happy with that. I think, I don't know if either of you saw the press conference today, but really, really interesting comments from Jurgen Klopp on the upcoming international break. Did you see them? I thought they were
talking about the COVID restrictions, but the Brazilian lads, especially,
I think it's about time, clubs put their foot down against, what is corrupt international FAs a lot of the time. And, there's different COVID variants in different countries. We've seen, people coming back from countries early on in the season and with loads of COVID cases and clubs heavily hit by that. We're coming to an important part of the season. There are new strains about. We're getting to an important stage for the country as well, where the vaccines are being pumped out and it's looking good ahead of the summer. And something like this could heavily change things. So, as I heard Steve say there, it's ludicrous. And the thought of looking ahead to the Euros and other things right now are stupid at the moment. So, yeah, I'm glad Klopp said something like that, and I hope other managers start to say things like that in the next few weeks.
That's before we even look at, Steve, the Mohamed Salah Olympic situation that's also raised its head over the past week, pal.
Yeah, that's another funny one, isn't it? He hasn't had the best relationship with the Egyptian FA, though, has he, over the past couple of years? So, wait and see how that unfolds. I'm fairly baffled that there's any international football going on at all at the moment. I know we've got obviously the Euros this summer and World Cup qualifiers and all that kind of thing, but just the idea of when countries are in the middle of what we're in the middle of right now, sending players all over the globe, it just seems I'm a little bit baffled by it, to be honest. I don't really see. We played a couple of friendlies, didn't we? England played a couple of friendlies a month or two ago, and it blows my mind that that anybody could think that was important enough to warrant people going all over the world for. So, yeah, I hope when it comes to international games that common sense prevails, and they just. Not saying that they, won't have a team at the Olympics, because obviously they will, and I guess it's within their rights to call them up if they want to. But the games, Klopp's absolutely right. With the games coming up for the Brazilian lads, he's absolutely right. We pay their wages, and having them go, off to goodness knows where. I'm baffled by it.
Let's not forget, Alisson couldn't go home for his dad's funeral either, in the same country that we're speaking about here. And to my understanding, Jack, and you probably have actually more info on this than me, I don't think that the clubs do have to allow the players to leave for Olympic duty. I don't think that falls under the same category as international duty.
It's like Klopp said earlier, clubs pay wages, and I think players probably get international fees, but I assume I've read something in the past. I might be wrong here, so correct me if I'm wrong. Please don't shout at me. But in the comments, but it's I believe that most players donate their international stuff to charities and things like that. So it's one of them things where clubs pay wages, and therefore if they don't want them to play in the Olympics, they're well within their rights to put their foot down and say no. But of course they want to keep the players on side. A lot of players, and particularly African players, Mohamed Salah likes to play for his country. We know our Brazilian as well, they love playing for their country. They love winning competitions with their country, so denying them might be harder than what we think. But at the minute, in the current climate we're in, with COVID and all the other things going on at the minute, I think we're definitely well within our right of not allowing them going away for the next international break. And I think clubs are probably taking one step at a time at the minute, and it's the next international break ahead rather than looking ahead to the Olympics in the summer. But yeah, Salah would be a big loss for us at the start of the season.
It won't just be us either, will it? As well, Jack. I mean, you're right. About Klopp putting his foot down. I'm sure Pep will have his say as well. Gabriel Jesus and what have you going away. I'm sure they'll all have similar concerns. So, so it might be that a bit of managerial solidarity makes the situation a little bit easier, and it's not just. I think you're right. If Firmino and Alisson thought, and Fabinho possibly, if they thought they were just, they were the only ones who were being stopped from going, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? I think. But
I don't know a single football fan either that enjoys the international breaks. Obviously, when it's a major tournament, people like international football, but don't think anyone's asked about international friendlies or international qualifiers. And these players are getting run into the ground this season already. Give them a break. Give them a break. And maybe that's me being selfish. Maybe other people see differently, but I genuinely haven't met a single person who enjoys international qualifiers and international breaks other than the Euros, the World Cup. Maybe people were interested in that pointless competition they brought in. I've forgotten what it's even called. That they brought in, that international that was meant to
European,
stop
whatever it was.
The Nations League. Is that what it was called?
Nations League. That's what it was.
But this season we've seen them play 3 games in a week at international level, and I just think with all the variants in different countries at the minute, with Germans and Spanish sides not letting their clubs play on English soil or letting English people in their country. I think it's better to just leave it for now and for definitely UEFA, FIFA, everyone to just focus on the major tournaments in the summer.
Good points. Gents, before we finish up really quickly, just a prediction for the 2 games before we speak next. So, as always, I like to put Steve on the spot first here. So, Mr. Bland for the Chelsea game and then for the Fulham game.
We should be keeping a tab on the predictions here, shouldn't we? A bit of prediction league.
I remember one in particular, a young fella, I think his name was Jack, came up with a 6-0 derby prediction.
6-0. Yeah, that's what it was. I reckon that Chelsea will be 1-1 and Fulham will be 3-0 Liverpool.
Jack?
I think 0-0 against Chelsea and 2-1 against Fulham. But nice. I just wanted to put this closing question on the screen for us all before we go.
When lockdowns end, what will be the last thing you'd like to do apart from go back into stadiums? Go on holiday, 100%. Number one priority for me is to get away and see some sunshine. Absolutely.
The first thing I'll be doing is going to the pub. But after that, get me in the sun, get me away.
I love golf. I just need to play golf. I'm walking around, holding a golf club all around the house every day, just like swinging it around, knocking table lamps over and all sorts, just because that's the first thing. But obviously that's going to come in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, holiday's right up there for me as well. It's just even just like the Lake District or something, just something that's not my home. It's something that is not that is not my house would be nice. Just a nice little change of scenery.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that the Anfield agenda jolly up to Arizona and California can go ahead in October, and then I'd love the family holiday somewhere in November. I'm going to be greedy about it, but yeah, look, it's mad to think that year's gone past, lads. It's absolutely flown. Like it's flown, but yet it's felt like it's dragged on at the same time. If that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense because it feels like nothing has happened, and yet it's been a really difficult year, for a lot of people. So. I just can't wait to see the back of it. School's going back here on Monday is going to be a massive thing for my little boy's 5 and he's just missed it so much. So looking forward to that. My
little dude actually went back this Monday, just gone. He started back. My daughter, she's in the second last year of secondary school. She won't be going back, I think, till 15th of March, if my memory's correct. So a couple of days before Paddy's Day. But yeah, he's loving it as well. And it's, they're doing it gradually here, bit by bit. So, junior, infants, first and second class, and then they're going back from there. So yeah, it's amazing how much we have more appreciation for teachers and stuff, Steve, these days, isn't it?
Oh, mate, yeah. Teachers and NHS staff and everybody.
I wish I was back at school. They, for me,
at least you can remember school.
Best times then.
Yeah, they were good days. Look, gents, this is a great place to finish up. Thank you as always to Stephen, to Jack, and to everybody who's tuned in. If you're listening to this, actually you won't be listening to this past on iTunes or Acast, but don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We're closing in on 80,000 subscribers amazingly. Drop a like on the video as well, and we'll be back next week as always. Massive thank you to Mr. Steve Bland and Mr. Jack 6-0, forever known as 6-0. Did I mention 6-0, Gil? Ladies and gents, look, it's been a pleasure.
That's why you're struggling on fantasy football, Jack. That says it all, doesn't it?
I tell you what, Jack, I'm about to launch a weekend prediction show on Mundo Sporto this week, where I'm going to go through all the games. I might just go 6-0 on all of them this week, just as a little homage to you, my pal.
We can count Jack out of that show, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, the joys of it, ladies and gents. We promise you this isn't bullying. We love him really. And look, we'll talk to you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great week, and up the Reds.